A microphone hitting the studio floor, that metallic clang echoing through absolute silence, and Steve Harvey, the man who'd hosted thousands of episodes, standing frozen in a moment that would redefine everything he thought he knew about his own show. What happened in those next 7 minutes wasn't scripted, it wasn't planned, and it definitely wasn't supposed to air, but it did. And millions of viewers watched as America's favorite game show host learned that sometimes the most important moments happen when you stop performing and start caring. But here's what nobody knows. The real story didn't start on that stage. It started 3 years earlier, in a corporate office in Phoenix, Arizona, when Catherine Martinez received the words that would change everything. "We're letting you go." Let me take you back to understand how we got to that moment. How a successful marketing executive became a woman living a lie. How a family began unraveling without even knowing why. And how a game show became the unlikely place where truth finally shattered the walls of pretending. 3 years before that microphone hit the floor, Catherine Martinez was living what looked like the American dream: corner office, six-figure salary, respect from colleagues, a family that depended on her steady income. She was the rock, the provider, the one who held everything together. Then came the restructuring, corporate speak for "we don't need you anymore." 22 years of loyalty erased in a 15-minute meeting. A severance package that seemed generous until you calculated how fast it would disappear. And a future that suddenly felt terrifyingly uncertain. Catherine told herself she'd find something new quickly. People with her experience always did. She updated her resume, reached out to contacts, applied to dozens of positions, and waited for the callbacks that never came. Weeks turned into months. Her severance was running out. Her husband worked 2 jobs already, barely making ends meet. Her daughter had just gotten accepted to college. Her elderly mother had moved in after losing Catherine's father. Everyone depended on her. Everyone believed in her. So Catherine made a decision that seemed logical at the time. She decided to pretend just for a little while, just until she figured things out. Just until she could fix this without making her family worry. Every morning, she woke up at 6, showered, put on business attire, made coffee, kissed her husband and daughter goodbye, and left for a job that no longer existed. She spent her days in public libraries, hunched over job applications, in coffee shops, nursing a single cup for hours while she networked online, in parking lots, sitting in her car crying silently before wiping away the tears and practicing her smile for when she got home. The severance money ran out. Catherine started pulling from their savings without telling anyone. When that disappeared, she took out credit cards in her name only. The debt piled up. The lies compounded, and the weight of pretending crushed her a little more each day. Her family noticed something was wrong, but they couldn't identify what. Catherine came home exhausted every evening, claiming work stress. She checked the mail obsessively, hiding bills before anyone else could see them. She cried in the shower where nobody could hear. She stopped sleeping through the night. Her daughter asked once, "Mom, are you okay? You seem different." Catherine's answer haunted her. "Just tired, sweetheart. Work has been demanding." Another lie added to the mountain. Her husband noticed too, the way Catherine flinched when he mentioned finances, the way she avoided conversations about the future, the way intimacy between them had become almost non-existent. He asked gently, "Honey, if something was wrong, you'd tell me, right?" Catherine's heart broke even as she smiled. "Of course. Everything's fine." The lie tasted like poison. This went on for 3 years. 3 years of pretending. 3 years of drowning while everyone thought she was swimming. 3 years of slowly dying inside while maintaining the performance of having everything under control. And then came the call that changed everything. Catherine's daughter burst into her library hideout one afternoon. They'd been selected for Family Feud. The whole family. Catherine's application from years ago had finally been chosen. Catherine's first instinct was to refuse. How could she go? How could she stand in front of cameras, in front of Steve Harvey, in front of America, when her entire life was a lie? But her daughter's face, the excitement, the joy, how could she take that away? So Catherine said yes. She packed her bags. She flew to Atlanta, and she told herself she could hold it together for just a few more days. Now let me take you to that Tuesday afternoon in Atlanta. The Family Feud studio buzzed with its usual energy, bright lights, Excited families. Steve Harvey working the crowd with that signature blend of humor and warmth. The Martinez family from Phoenix stood at their podium, facing off against the Hendersons from Memphis. Standard setup, standard questions, standard laughs. But Steve Harvey noticed something different about contestant number 4, a woman in her mid-40s named Catherine Martinez. The way she gripped that podium, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the way she stood slightly apart from her family. Steve noticed. Of course he noticed. 30 years in entertainment had taught him to read people. He'd spent years performing himself, wearing masks, hiding his own struggles behind laughter. He recognized the signs. The game progressed normally through the first 2 rounds. The Martinez family was doing well, racking up points with solid answers. Catherine had barely spoken, letting her family members take most of the questions. Every time the camera panned to her, she forced that smile. The same smile she'd been wearing for 3 years. The smile that said everything's fine when nothing was fine. But when her daughter missed an answer in round 3, Catherine stepped up to the podium. Her turn, her moment, the spotlight fully on her. The question was innocent enough. Name something people do when they're trying to avoid someone. Steve looked at Catherine with that expectant smile. The audience leaned in, 300 people waiting for her answer. Her family watching proudly, the cameras rolling. And Catherine opened her mouth to give a game show answer. But what came out was 3 years of pain she could no longer contain. "I've been lying to my family for 3 years, Steve." The studio didn't immediately fall silent. It took a few seconds for the words to register, for the audience to realize this wasn't part of the show, for Steve Harvey's smile to slowly fade. Time seemed to slow. The bright lights felt suddenly harsh. "What's that, sweetheart?" Steve asked, his voice gentle but confused. The cameras kept rolling. Catherine's hands were shaking. Her daughter reached for her arm, confused and scared. But Catherine shook her head. She'd started this. She couldn't stop now. "I lost my job 3 years ago," she continued, her voice gaining strength even as tears streamed down her face. "I've been pretending to go to work every single day, getting dressed, leaving the house, sitting in parking lots, libraries, coffee shops, anywhere but home, because I couldn't tell them I failed." The studio fell completely silent now. 200 people holding their breath. The Henderson family stood frozen. Catherine's family looked at her with expressions ranging from shock to heartbreak. Her daughter was crying, suddenly understanding so many small things. Her husband looked like he'd been physically struck. Her elderly mother closed her eyes, a single tear tracking down her weathered cheek. Steve Harvey dropped his cards. Actually dropped them. They scattered across the studio floor with a sound that seemed deafening in that silence. The producers in the booth were panicking. This wasn't television. This was a breakdown happening in real time. They should stop filming, cut to commercial, do something. But Steve Harvey raised one hand, a single gesture. Let it play out. He walked across that studio floor and stood directly in front of Catherine Martinez. "Catherine," he said quietly, "how long have you been carrying this alone?" The question broke something in Catherine, like a pressure valve finally opening. "Every single day," she whispered. "Every morning I wake up and put on work clothes and kiss my family goodbye and pretend. I pretend I'm going to a job that doesn't exist anymore. I pretend everything is fine. I pretend I'm not drowning." Her voice was gaining strength now. "I've maxed out credit cards they don't know about. I've drained our savings. I've applied to 347 jobs and gotten 17 interviews and 0 offers. I've sat in my car and cried until I couldn't breathe. I've prayed to God to either fix this or end it. And every single day I came home and smiled and pretended everything was fine." The studio was utterly silent, except for Catherine's voice and the quiet sobbing of audience members. Steve Harvey just listened. The comedian, the entertainer, simply stood there and listened with his full attention. "Why couldn't you tell them?" Steve asked. Catherine looked at her family, really looked at them. "Because I'm supposed to be strong," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm the mom. I'm the provider. I'm the one who holds everything together. My husband works 2 jobs. My daughter is counting on me for college. My mother has nowhere else to go. How do I look them in the eye and say I failed? How do I tell them that the person they've been depending on doesn't exist anymore?" Steve Harvey stood there, taking it all in. And then he did something nobody saw coming. He took off his suit jacket, the same jacket he wore in every episode, part of his television persona, part of the Steve Harvey brand. And he put it around Catherine's shoulders. "You didn't fail," he said, his voice carrying across that silent studio. "You survived. 3 years of carrying this alone. 3 years of waking up every day and choosing to keep going. 3 years of protecting your family because you love them more than yourself. That's not failure, Catherine. That's survival. And sometimes survival is the bravest thing we can do." But he wasn't done. Steve turned to face the camera directly. "We're going to stop this game right here," he announced. "This family needs something more important than points on a board. They need truth. They need healing. They need each other. And sometimes a game show needs to remember that the people standing here aren't contestants. They're human beings. And that matters more than entertainment." The audience erupted in applause, not the usual game show cheering. This was recognition, validation, something sacred. Steve turned back to Catherine's family. "Did you know?" he asked them. Catherine's husband stepped forward, tears streaming down his face. "I knew something was wrong," he admitted. "The way you came home exhausted but wouldn't talk about your day. The way you cried in the shower. The way you checked the mail before anyone else. The way you stopped letting me touch you. I knew, but I didn't know how to ask. I was afraid if I pushed, you'd break, so I waited. And I hated myself for waiting." Catherine's daughter was sobbing now. "I should have noticed more," she said. "I was so wrapped up in my own stuff. I saw you were tired and sad, but I didn't ask why. I just assumed work stress. I took your strength for granted. I'm so sorry, Mom." And then Catherine's mother spoke. "I knew from day one," she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "A mother always knows. I saw it in your eyes that first morning. The fear, the shame. I watched you leave every day knowing you had nowhere to go. I wanted to say something, but I also knew you needed to tell us in your own time. I just prayed you'd find the courage before it killed you." Steve Harvey looked between them all. "This is what Family Feud is really about," he said. "Not the game, not the prizes. This, right here. Families being real with each other. Families choosing honesty over comfort. Love doesn't require perfection. It requires truth." What happened next became legendary. Steve Harvey made an executive decision that broke every rule. He brought the Henderson family across the stage, made both families play together, competitors transformed into allies. Every point scored, every dollar won would be split between them. But more importantly, Steve changed the questions, made them personal, made them matter. "Name something that takes more courage than most people realize." Catherine's daughter answered first, asking for help. Number one answer. "Name something everyone needs but nobody wants to admit." Catherine's husband, "To be vulnerable." Number two answer. "Name something that makes a family stronger." Catherine herself answered. Her voice was steady now, clear, honesty. "Even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." Number one answer. The studio erupted. They played through 5 more questions, each one carefully chosen by Steve to continue the healing, questions about forgiveness. Second chances, what really matters, love that survives mistakes. And somewhere in the middle of that impossible episode, something shifted, not just in that studio, not just for the Martinez family, but for everyone watching. People saw themselves in Catherine's confession, saw their own secrets, their own pretending. By the end, both families had won enough money to make a real difference. But everyone understood the money was secondary. What mattered was the permission Steve Harvey had given Catherine to stop performing, the permission he'd given everyone watching to be imperfect, to be human. The episode aired 3 months later, with minimal editing. The producers recognized they had something special, something raw and real in a world that felt increasingly manufactured. It became the highest-rated Family Feud episode in the show's history, over 12 million viewers. But the numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is what happened after. The flood of messages from viewers sharing their own secrets and struggles, the online support groups that formed, the conversations that started in living rooms across America about honesty and vulnerability. The real story is Catherine Martinez, who went back to school, got certified in a new field, and now runs her own consulting business, helping people navigate career transitions. The real story is how her family didn't fall apart. They grew stronger, closer, more real. The real story is Steve Harvey, who keeps that episode's footage in his office, who tells new hosts that the most important moments happen when you forget about entertainment and remember humanity. Subscribe and share this story, because what happened next changed everything. 6 months after the episode aired, Steve received a letter from Catherine, handwritten. It wasn't thanking him for the money or exposure. It was thanking him for something more profound. "You saw past the contestant," she wrote. "You saw a human being breaking under the weight of pretending, and you gave me permission to stop. You showed me that being seen is worth more than being perfect. That changed my life. That saved my life." That letter sits framed in Steve's dressing room, a reminder of what really matters. Catherine's husband later revealed the family had been on the verge of divorce. The lies and distance were destroying them. That moment on Family Feud, as painful as it was, saved their marriage. "Sometimes you have to break apart to break through," he said. "That day was our destruction. Everything after has been rebuilding, this time on truth instead of pretending." The Martinez family still watches Family Feud together every week. Their tradition, their reminder that love shows up in unexpected places, sometimes in a game show host who threw away the script, sometimes in the courage to tell a terrifying truth, sometimes in family that loves you anyway. Steve Harvey learned something that day too. He talks about it constantly now. That episode changed how he approaches every show, every contestant, every moment. "My job isn't to entertain people," he says. "My job is to see people, really see them. To recognize when someone is drowning and throw them a lifeline instead of a punchline. Some moments transcend television. Sometimes the bravest thing I can do is stop being a host and start being human." The jacket Steve gave Catherine that day, she had it framed with a plaque. "The day I stopped pretending and started living." It hangs in her home office, a constant reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth. Because here's what Catherine discovered, what Steve demonstrated, what millions witnessed: truth doesn't destroy families. Lies do, pretending does, hiding does. But truth is what makes healing possible. Truth is what allows love to be real instead of conditional. Truth is what transforms relationships from performances into connections. Today, Catherine speaks at conferences about shame, resilience, and vulnerability. She's written a book. She's appeared on podcasts and morning shows. She's built an entire second career on helping others find courage to stop pretending. She starts every speech the same way. "My name is Catherine Martinez, and I spent 3 years lying to the people I love most. Today I'm going to tell you what happened when I finally told the truth." The audience always falls silent, just like that studio did. And then she tells them about Steve Harvey, about a microphone hitting the floor, about a suit jacket that became a symbol of compassion, about the day a game show became a lifeline. Steve occasionally shows up at her events, not for publicity, not for cameras, just to sit in the back row and watch a woman who taught him something profound. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop performing and start caring. The microphone that hit the floor was picked up within seconds. Production assistants retrieved Steve's cards. The cameras kept rolling, the show went on. But the impact of what happened continues to resonate. A reminder that in a world obsessed with perfection, with curated images, with maintaining appearances, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let people see you as you really are. Broken, struggling, imperfect, human. And sometimes, when you finally show people who you really are, you discover they love you anyway, not in spite of your imperfections, because of your courage to be real. Catherine's daughter is in college now, studying psychology. She wants to help people like her mom, people who are drowning but pretending to swim, people who need someone to see them. Her husband renewed their vows last year. In his speech, he said something that made everyone cry. "I married you when we were young and stupid. I'm choosing you now that we're older and honest. And that's a better foundation." Catherine's mother passed away 2 years after the episode aired. But before she did, she told her daughter something Catherine carries forever. "I'm proud of you, not for being perfect, for being brave enough to be imperfect." And Steve Harvey, He still keeps a spare pocket square in his jacket, just in case someone needs their tears wiped away, just in case another Catherine walks onto his stage, carrying a secret too heavy to bear alone. Because that's what love looks like. That's what courage sounds like. That's what happens when a game show host remembers that people aren't just contestants, they're human beings with stories and struggles that matter more than any game. Share this story with someone who needs it, someone who's pretending, someone who's drowning, someone who needs permission to tell their truth. Because if Catherine Martinez and Steve Harvey taught us anything, it's this. The moment you stop pretending is the moment you start living. And sometimes it takes a game show, a falling microphone, and a man in a suit jacket to remind us that being seen is worth infinitely more than being perfect. That's the legacy of the day. Steve Harvey stopped Family Feud, not because something went wrong, but because something went profoundly, beautifully, courageously right. That's what happens when entertainment remembers humanity. That's what happens when a family chooses truth. That's what happens when a woman drowning for 3 years finally lets herself be saved. The suit jacket that Steve gave Catherine has become something of a legend in the Family Feud community. Staff members who were there still talk about it. New employees are told Catherine's story as part of their orientation, not as entertainment, but as a reminder of what the show can be at its very best. Steve has said in interviews that Catherine's episode changed him fundamentally. "I realized that day that my job isn't to run a game show," he explained. "My job is to create moments where people can be their best selves." Catherine showed me what that looks like. The producers kept every second of raw footage. Those who've seen it describe it as one of the most powerful pieces of television ever recorded, not because of technical brilliance or entertainment value, but because it captured something increasingly rare, a moment of absolute unguarded human connection. And what about the question that started it all? Name something people do when they're trying to avoid someone. Catherine never did answer it, at least not in the traditional sense. But maybe her confession was the answer. Maybe we avoid people by pretending, by hiding behind masks of perfection, by maintaining lies that keep us isolated, by never letting anyone see who we really are. And maybe the real answer to every question on Family Feud, every question in life, comes down to this: stop avoiding, start being real, let yourself be seen. That's not just a story, that's a revolution. One honest moment at a time.